Hey everyone, it is Wednesday, April 1st, 2020, and I hope you're all staying strong and doing well. I am still at my friend's guest house in Arizona, and I plan to be here until circumstances improve and it's safe and responsible to hit the road again. But I'm doing great, I'm keeping tabs on family, and I'm using this time to recharge and plan for the future. Today I'm going to take a closer look at the Ursa Minor J30 camper top for the 4-door Jeep Wrangler. Ursa Minor Vehicles has an office in San Diego, and they also have a location in Portland. And they're originally known for their e-camper, which is a pop-up camper that's added to the top of a Honda Element. When the 4-door Jeep Wrangler became available, they saw an opportunity and started molding their own hardtops with the pop-up built into the top itself. So this is not a repurposed Jeep hardtop that was modified. This is a whole new piece. Now my camper has been installed for almost 4 years now, so when we look at it, you are not looking at a fresh install. You're looking at a camper that's been used on the long term, and I've spent close to 1,000 nights in it. I had to refer to some old emails, but I found it. I ordered my camper on June 30th, 2016, and it was delivered to OK 4-Wheel Drive on August 30th, 2016. I'm looking at my original order right now, and it has everything on it except for the shipping costs. So I paid $7,500 for the camper itself, and then, if I recall, $800 to $1,000 to have it shipped from San Diego to OK 4-Wheel Drive in New Jersey, where I had it installed. Now, it's a big piece. It was in a massive wooden crate and had to come across the country via truck freight, so that's why that was so costly. I know a lot of people opt to drive out to Ursa Minor to have it installed, but coming from Pennsylvania, I would have had to have taken time off of work, and it was kind of a wash. I spec'd it out with the textured black finish and the white pop top, 2 sliding rear windows in the back, the Thule Aero Bar adjustable roof rack, and 2 outlets in the sleeper, 1 USB and another regular 12-volt socket, the Navigator headliner organizer, which are the pockets in the ceiling above my cab where I drive, the rear load bay LED lighting option, and also the awning mounts on the driver's side of the camper. It didn't come with the awning itself, I already had that. I think that I'm going to take a moment and reposition myself in the shade somewhere. The sun is intense. Last week it was in the low 70s, and now it's just like someone flipped a switch and turned on the heat. You can get the Ursa Minor camper color matched to your Jeep, but it's a costly option, and the textured black finish is a kind of Line-X, and it's extremely tough. It has withstood a ton of abuse. I personally prefer the appearance of a white lid. I think it kind of harkens back to, well, the VW Vanagon with the pop top. However, aside from aesthetics, I strongly recommend the white lid. I have friends who have the same camper with textured black lids, and it looks really uniform, it looks great. However, in direct sunlight, the textured black lid gets considerably warmer than the white one. I am very happy with my original order, but there are 2 minor things that I would change. First, I would omit the rear side windows altogether and just go with flat fiberglass on both sides. There's nothing wrong with those sliding rear windows. They have screens in them so I can leave them open and ventilate the Jeep, but the fact of the matter is they are constantly obscured by gear. So for my application, they serve very little purpose, and I think I can use that space a little bit more efficiently if they weren't there at all. Another thing that I should have opted for was a power outlet, and this isn't a very big deal. I've made do without it, but there's an option to have a power outlet installed in the cab portion right behind your factory visors. And I didn't see a need for it at the time, but it would have been a nice place to plug the GPS into. I had the camper shipped to OK 4-Wheel Drive in New Jersey. When it got to OK, I showed up in my Jeep and a bunch of guys came out, helped me lift it on, and it was on top of the Jeep in probably 15 minutes. My friends Rin and Matt helped me bolt it on, and in the back it uses the factory hardtop mounting locations, which is 6 bolts, 3 on each rail. And in the front, it doesn't use the clamps like the factory hardtop. It uses 2 bolts through the roll bar, 1 on the driver's side and 1 on the passenger side. So 8 bolts altogether. What was the most time consuming was the wiring, because the camper has LED lighting and power outlets built into it. Plus, there is a high center-mounted rear brake light that's built into the camper above the tailgate. Ursa Minor makes it pretty easy to do the wiring because there's already a bus and wiring harnesses routed throughout the camper. All you have to do is hook up your grounds, hook up your power source, do some cutting and splicing, and it's all fairly rudimentary. It's not much more difficult than wiring a set of lights on your front bumper. I'd say it's just a matter of a few hours to install if you've done it before and you know exactly what you're doing. Probably closer to 6 hours to install if you're just seeing this all for the first time and you're carefully tiptoeing through it. I remember driving home that night and I noticed that the Jeep felt heavier at first, but that feeling went away after about 30 minutes of driving and I was already used to it. To this day, with the AEV suspension, I don't notice the camper top up there at all, and I think that's one of the merits of the Ursa Minor J30 camper. You can still take your Jeep wheeling with it on and still run the trails, and if you're accustomed to having that up there, you don't really notice it. It doesn't change the dimensions of your vehicle so that you have to drastically alter your trail selection. Within reason. Obviously, you don't want to go off camber into a rock or into a tree, but it is a very compact and unintrusive sleeping platform. Also, after spending some time in the rain, there was a little bit of water ingress at some of the seams. The fabric itself that Ursa Minor uses is exceptional at keeping the water out. However, that water tightness is slightly compromised in spots where the panels are stitched together. So all it took in my case was a $7 tube of seam sealer applied to one seam in particular, and it's been great ever since. A couple other things that I almost forgot. The rear window on the Ursa Minor hardtop is from a factory JK hardtop, but the early 2007 models, and I think maybe a couple years beyond that, where the glass is slightly narrower. However, this glass already has defrost built into it and accommodations for a rear wiper. So that is also an option from Ursa Minor if you want those features. I did not opt for them. My rear visibility is so poor that I don't miss the defrost or the rear wiper at all. In fact, my Jeep came with a soft top, so I never had it to begin with. If you plan to carry cargo on the roof of your camper, you're going to want to upgrade the lift struts, the lift springs. The J30 by default comes with a light-duty spring that is suitable for no cargo, but let's say you plan to carry one kayak, in which case I'd recommend the medium-duty spring. Or if you plan to carry 2 kayaks or a cargo box, I would recommend the heavy-duty spring. Since I used to carry the kayak around up there, I did eventually upgrade to the medium-duty struts, which is what I'm running now, and I feel like they're just right. Awnings are another consideration. The Ursa Minor is a rugged fiberglass composite. It is very tough, but you are still mounting your awning to fiberglass, and even though it's reinforced, you have to be sensible about it. So I recommend an awning that's a little bit on the lighter side of the spectrum. Something like the awnings from ARB or the offering from Rhino Rack would probably be just right for the Ursa Minor. By default, Ursa Minor installs the external latches on the front sides of the camper lid. However, if you have an extra long awning, like the ARB 2500, they're going to need to rotate the latches to the front surface of the camper lid. And you need to make them aware of that before they start building your order, but they will easily accommodate that request. The interior of the camper is intimate. I would say that it's narrower than most hardshell campers, but it's also longer than most hardshell campers. So it's very accommodating if you're tall. I'm a meager 5'7", but I think that there's enough headroom to stand up in here if you're over 6 feet. It's just spacious enough for 2 people, and you might also be able to squeeze in a small child or a dog at your feet. The mattress consists of 4 parts. There's a large front part, the rear part, and these pieces that are over the hatches. It's foam, they're 2 inches thick, and honestly, they're okay. I'm comfortable enough, but I have a shape like a board. If I want to soften it up a little bit, I usually run some blankets underneath or sleep on top of my sleeping bags, in which case it's a lot better. I've been living full-time in here for 3 years, so this is adequate, but I do think there's room for improvement. The fabric is Sunbrella, and as far as keeping the weather out and UV resistance, it is superb. I do find that in windy conditions it does flap around rather noisily, so I wish it were slightly more tensioned. I imagine to some extent that comes with age because I have opened and closed this camper about 1,000 times. To help keep things tensioned, I always deploy the support rod at the back of the camper. It has a soft fabric headliner, and I've added some personal touches like my decorative flags, and these are custom pouches from Blue Ridge Overland Gear. There's a very small window at the front of the camper, and the back of the camper has very large windows that can be unzipped in 2 different ways. You can either unzip the Sunbrella and leave just the screen in place, or you can unzip both the Sunbrella fabric and the screen so it's totally open air and you have access to the outside. The mesh screen is very tough. It withstands countless openings and closings, but the mesh itself is very coarse, so it does allow no-see-ums and tiny bugs to find their way in at night. That's something that I'd like to see improved if you live in a buggy climate, but at the same time, the coarse mesh does allow much better breathability, so the airflow in here is very good in the desert or in hot climates. After using this for so many years, I would say that it takes me 30 seconds to deploy the camper and about 60 seconds to put it back away. The convenience factor is absolutely huge. If you're a full-timer, you're not going to want to wrestle with a clunky tent every morning when it's time to break camp and you need to head out. Finally, the Ursa Minor J30 camper is an absolute tank. When I was in my accident in Quebec and the Jeep landed on its side, the front corner on the passenger side of the Ursa Minor took the impact, and there was no visible damage except for maybe some hairline cracks in the gel coating. You do have to close the camper very carefully and open a window or remove a hatch to prevent the fabric from billowing. You want to make sure that when you're closing it that the fabric collapses inward, because you can see right behind me that shadow through the fabric is one of the hinges. And if the fabric comes in contact with that while it's closing, you risk cutting the fabric. Now again, I've had this open and closed about 1,000 times, and I only have like 3 very small slices in my fabric. Those can be easily repaired using tape or fabric patches from an outdoor store. In fact, the tape that I installed a couple of years ago now is starting to look really bad, so it's on my to-do list to peel that off and apply something new. Also, weight. These are approximations based on, well, Googling, but from what I've read, the factory JK Unlimited hardtop is 150 pounds, and the base J30 camper is 265 pounds. The walls and the ceiling of the Ursa Minor camper are carpeted black, so it ties in nicely with the factory upholstery. Also, you can store a reasonable amount of bedding up in the camper when it's closed. I would say 2 sleeping bags, a blanket, and 2 pillows. You can probably jam more in there, but you're going to start noticing a lot of resistance when you try to latch it. In the 4 years that I've had the camper, it's needed no major repairs. In other words, I never needed to get back to Ursa Minor everything. It's been flawless. The seam sealer and the little cuts I was able to take care of myself, and it's still in very good condition. I spent some time at Ursa Minor. I visited both their offices, and I got to know the guys behind the camper, and they will stand behind the product. So if you have any trouble with it down the road, they'll do their best to take care of you. The Ursa Minor camper doesn't come with an external ladder, so your main point of entry is from inside the camper using the hatches. You can rig up your own external ladder, and before I took delivery of the camper, I thought I might want to do so, but after using it once or twice, I was perfectly fine using the interior hatches. It does get a little bit more interesting if you're sharing the camper with a partner, in which case if one of you has to get up in the middle of the night, you sort of have to be an Ocean's 11 contortionist to remove the hatch and go downstairs without disrupting the person you're sleeping with. So for 2 people, I can see how it might be nice to be able to exit the camper from the window and go down a ladder. When I got the Ursa Minor camper, it absolutely changed how I perceived the Jeep. I thought, alright, I'll have this really cool sleeping platform that's just a step up from a rooftop tent. And that is not the case at all. As I got to know it, I thought, I can live out of this thing. And I suppose it was pivotal in inspiring me to set off across the country like I did. So the pros are that it's a nearly invisible alternative to a roof rack and a rooftop tent. You can stand up in it. It's powered, it's convenient, very quick to deploy and to put away. So if, for whatever reason, you need to leave a campsite without exiting your vehicle, you can conceivably do it with this. The things that I would improve would be the thickness of the mattresses. I'd provide an option from the factory to have a finer mesh installed over the coarse mesh, and I'd improve the tension of the tent fabric just to make it a little bit quieter in the wind. I can't think of anything else, but I love it, and I recommend it. It's worth the price if you plan to do this a lot, or if you'd like to do this a lot. Because I promise, the Ursa Minor J30 will inspire you to get out more.